All right, good morning, Albert's List. My name is Albert here, and I'd like to welcome you to a very special Sunday webinar here on Albert's Job Listings and Referrals, where for those of you who may have checked out this event earlier, we're going to talk about mastering your career self-awareness with Sandy McClenahan, who's here to my left and owner of Purpose-Filled Presence. And so, we're here at the end of January now. We've gone through 29 days of our year so far. And as you and I all know, the HR budgets are being finalized here really this week, next week, and probably the week after. And so if you haven't got on the bandwagon yet for getting your job search figured out and getting your resume edited, well, we can start today. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about what self-awareness is, how you can work towards your self-awareness, and pretty much more or less come to the conclusions that you want to come to when it comes to how your job search figures itself out over time with the help of Sandy over here. And so who is Sandy McClenahan? Sandy is the founder of Purpose-Filled Presence, as I mentioned, a coaching practice focused on helping others discover the greatness of their journey. She helps her clients discover what their should is based on their own definition of success to drive impactful breakthroughs. And so in addition to what she does in her coaching now, she's formerly had roles at BMC Software and NetApp. And you can find out more at purposefulpresence.com. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Albert.
So tell us a little bit more about what it is that you do based on beyond the description that I just offered.
Sure, of course. So as you mentioned, I run Purpose-Filled Presence, which is a coaching platform as well as a blog. And I use my coaching in a sense to help people get more in touch with who they are, with who they really want to be, and then helping people become confident showing up in the world that way.
Okay.
I've found that a lot of us find that we're pretty unfulfilled in life, and a lot of that is because we're trying to live up to how we think other people expect us to be. We're trying to be successful in somebody else's eyes, and no matter how high we reach, if we're trying to be somebody else's version of success, we're never going to find it for ourselves.
And so why do you think we spend so much time trying to be successful in the eyes of others, right? I know that society and societal expectations are one of them, and the other one is just the pressure. I mean, we all live in Silicon Valley, and we know that for a lot of people in this group, even paying bills sometimes is tough because you're paying $900, maybe double that for something that's the size of a closet.
Yeah, I think there's a certain amount of comfort involved in trying to fit somebody else's mold, because then we don't have to create it for ourselves. Trying to create our own idea of something is scary, and sometimes saying this is who I am and this is what I want is absolutely terrifying, because what if somebody thinks whatever about what I'm trying to do, and what is somebody else going to think about this, and what if I don't succeed? And all of those fears start building up, and eventually we let go of what we think we want, and we just start saying, I should do this, I should make this money, I should have this job, I should. And it gets pretty compact in there, and suddenly we lose ourselves.
Okay. And so how do we find ourselves again and do what it is that we genuinely want to do?
Sure. Well, I'd like to start by kind of dispelling the idea that to become self-aware we have to go sit in the forest and cross our legs and sit like this. Self-awareness is something that's far more important than the spiritual, I guess, woo-woo is the way that people put it. Self-awareness is simply that. It's knowing yourself. It's becoming consciously aware of what it is that we want, that we need, that we find fulfilling, that we find happiness. And really the best way to do that is to start questioning.
Okay.
It's that simple.
Anyway, I want to take a pause real quick because we're actually sideways on Facebook Live. Is there something we can do to change that real quick? I guess, yeah, do that if you have to.
Technical difficulties, everybody trying to get Facebook Live.
I can see myself here on Facebook Live, so it's kind of funny.
Bear with us, everybody.
Yeah, we have 12 people watching. So actually, just for those of you who are currently watching, the 12 to 14 of you, welcome. If you have any questions during the course of this conversation, I'd invite you to ask and put them in the comments. I have the video here on my iPad, so I will read them as we come across them, or we'll address them towards the end. If you have any comments to make as well, we can address those too. And I think Anthony here, who is behind on doing a lot of our technical stuff, will look at Sandy's live video on her personal profile and ask and address any questions as well. So if you have any questions so far about what we've been discussing, we've spoken for a few minutes on what it means to be self-aware and the definition of self-awareness. Feel free to ask away. My video is still vertical here? Okay, there we go.
There we go.
We're doing much better job of this. Okay, so we were just talking a little bit about self-awareness here, and so we have this idea that it's a lot of this woo-woo, new agey thing that only a certain, I guess, part of this world really gets to know, because maybe they go on their 10-month sabbatical around the world to really think about it. But it's a lot easier than that, right?
A whole lot easier.
So tell me what self-awareness is and how people can practice that daily, and even more so, we'll jump right here. We'll jump into, I guess, the career aspect of it.
Sure.
So we can discuss that as well.
Of course. So self-awareness, right, outside of the high new agey thing.
Mm-hmm.
Self-awareness is simply being consciously understanding of what's going on in here and in here.
Okay.
It's understanding what am I thinking and trying to figure out the why of it, because we have thoughts, we have feelings, all of those things are completely natural, and it's deciding whether or not you want that to be your reality.
Okay.
Because we actually have power over our thoughts and our feelings, and when we decide, I don't want to show up from this place of fear, which is what's running in our head, we can decide to say, I want to do this differently. How can I do this differently? And then start questioning yourself on that. Who, what, where, when, why, how. We've been asking these questions since we were children. We loved the question why when we were young.
Right,
and
totally.
it was tamped out of a lot of us. And I would really like to invite everybody to bring that question back as much as possible.
And so how do we move closer to asking these questions? Because we're so caught up in the busyness of every day. And even in our long commutes to and from work, or even just waking up in the morning and knowing that you need to get on the hustle, the time to answer these questions can appear to be very limited.
Yes.
And so how does a busy person, whether you're here in the Bay Area or outside of it, make time to ask those questions, and hopefully ask those questions and get answers that don't scare them completely out of their shoes?
Sure. Well, I'd like to first kind of introduce a Venus concept, which is it's a day.
Okay.
And if they don't have time for 15 minutes, they should meditate for 2 hours. And it's kind of a crazy concept, as you said, because where do we find time? And honestly, I think it comes down to priorities. Because we can all find 2 minutes in our day to stop. To just stop and take a deep breath and ask ourselves something. We can all find 2 minutes. We can all find 30 seconds if we don't think we can find 2 minutes.
We can.
And that's really all it takes, is one little question in the morning, like, what do I want today to look like? Do I want today to start off dreading my alarm clock and dreading the time I drive to the office and dreading the time I'm at the office, praying until it's Saturday morning and I get my free time? Or do I want to wake up in the morning and say, today is my day, and I'm going to make the most of it, I'm going to be happy, and whatever comes up, I'm going to deal with it? That takes 30 seconds before you even pop out of bed.
Right. Makes sense. And so let's focus on the job hunt, because I think that's the thing that a lot of people are focusing on within my group, within really the greater world, as we hit into February here and the job search goes into overdrive. And so knowing that some people, live in their careers on a almost like a week-to-week basis, and knowing that I've been in this job search before, where you really have to look at everything in terms of this week and not next week, otherwise you completely lose yourself. How does a structure of a job search look in how you coach your clients, and how folks should approach with their own version of whatever self-awareness is to them?
Sure. When I'm working with somebody, the first thing that I usually ask them is why. That why question, as I mentioned, when we were kids, we asked it all the time, and now we really don't. And so the why of why do I want this particular job versus this particular job? The why of small business versus corporate. The why is really where it comes down to, and it's why being, do I want to make this kind of impact versus this kind of impact? And it really just kind of comes down to asking those questions over and over again, and stopping every now and again as well, because I think that especially in this time of looking for a job, which can be extremely turbulent, it can be very stressful, and we can get really caught up in the hamster wheel of our brain that says, I'm never going to find another job, and the best has already come, and all of those questions that just create more fear and stress and worry that weighs us down. And throughout the process of finding a job, taking those moments to breathe can be extremely important, even down to if I'm sitting in an interview and somebody asks me a question and my knee-jerk reaction is to start talking. Talking. But if I stop and take a breath and consider the question, what's going to come out of my mouth is going to be a whole lot different than if I'm just trying to fill the space because I'm scared of that silence.
So let's talk about that interview real quick, because there are, I think, a lot of people within Albert's List and really in the general public who go to a lot of interviews and 20, 30 interviews later, they still find themselves without a job. And part of it is being able to, I think, own your story, and the ability to own your story is also self-awareness. And so let's cover, because we have a couple of demographics, I think, in our group that will find this interesting. The first one is, if you're a new graduate and you just graduated from college, whether it was last June or this last December, how do you own your self-awareness as a new grad who's never worked before?
Sure. It wasn't all that long ago that I was there myself, and when we're new graduates, and that idea of becoming successful is really fresh in our brain, right? We've lived the whole entirety of our life up until this point to get a job, to get the job that pays us whatever it is that deems us as a success.
Agreed.
That's what our whole life has been, right? And suddenly the world is opening up to us. And I think in your talk you've mentioned before, there's no shame in just taking a job when you have to. And I agree that time it's probably the best sometimes, because you need to gain a little bit of experience, and that job that we think that we need to have in order to become successful immediately out the gate, it may or may not happen the way that we expect it to. And there's a certain amount of holding on to an outcome that causes a lot of stress for us. Like when we expect, we have this great big idea of exactly how our life is going to look, and when we don't meet that, we get really defeated. Really defeated.
And so for somebody who comes out of school now, they notice that the economy is doing really well, and they think that they might be entitled to that job that pays them $70,000 out of school with decent benefits and everything. What's kind of your message to them in not only looking at their career, but also being more self-aware and owning their story?
It comes down to a question that I ask a lot of my clients, and that's, what does success really look like to you? As I mentioned, somebody else's idea of success, that's their definition. And we may be making up what we think their definition is. So you have to take some time to look inward, that self-awareness, right? And to figure out, what does my vision of success look like? Because if I really asked myself, a few years ago, what did success look like for me? It wasn't X amount of dollars every single year. It wasn't, the new car and all these other things. It really came down to a success inside and how I felt, how I wanted to wake up in the morning instead of dreading the alarm clock. It was wanting to actually be excited about the day that I was having.
And how about success with regards to, so I think some people have reasonable success metrics that they'd like to go towards. I'd like to, for example, be worth this much money by this time, or purchase a house by this time. And then there are the other people who are like, my idea of a successful job is one where I can travel around the world and my company pays for it, and all these other really interesting things that, I think people dream about and may not necessarily be very realistic.
Sure.
And so how do you, I think, separate the success that's the possible success, kind of like the SMART goals, and success that just seems kind of just, okay, what have you been drinking? Because I'd like some of that too.
Sure. I was just talking to a friend of mine the other day, and I was struggling with this a little bit myself. And he brought something up to me that really struck me hard. And it's a change in the frame of what does success look like. And instead of asking, what does this goal get me? You know, what does it get me? What is that tangible thing? It's what does this goal do for me? Because if I'm reaching way out there for this big dream, right? That is my motivator. And I may not reach that particular dream, but if I get this close to it, that's what that goal did for me. It got me to there. And the next time,
shoot for the moon, and you miss it, you hit the stars.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. So would you encourage members of my group and really just the greater bit of society to dream unreasonably?
I would say to dream unreasonably, but don't be attached to the outcome.
Right.
Because it's that dream of this is the only thing that can work, that's going to create success, happiness, whatever. It's looking at that goal of this is where I'm going, and whatever happens along the way, that's what's important. Where it gets me, not quite as important.
And so you mentioned something that I've heard a lot from Anthony over here, which is to detach yourself from the outcome.
Yes.
And I feel like that's actually the most important part of this entire process. Can you walk me through what it means to detach from the outcome and how we both emotionally, mentally, spiritually cope with detaching ourselves from things that sometimes seem so close and so meant for us but might not be?
Sure. Yeah, it's certainly a struggle that I've dealt with in my life as well. I can really relate to that. You know, like I said, we get this idea in our head of this is what it means to reach that place, right? And when we have only one place that we can go, there are so many different ways we can get thrown off course and start feeling disappointed and thinking I'm never going to get there. When we reach for something that's less concrete, that's more in an abstract world of, okay, this is what success looks like for me, instead of this job at this company making this much money, then we're no longer aiming towards this one point. We're aiming towards a whole array of different end goals that are going to be just as meaningful to us. And so suddenly it's not so much as I have to follow this one path, but I get to kind of veer off and test the waters and see where is it that's going to get me to any of these points that will help me reach my goal. So it's not one outcome anymore. It's, you know, all types of different opportunities.
Right. So it's would if I heard you correctly there, would it be to say that we have to kind of approach this with a mindset of abundance?
Yes.
Right? Abundance. And
Yes.
Abundance, I know, is a very, I think, also woo-y term
Yes.
for a lot of people too, right? And so walk through the audience about abundance a little bit.
Sure. You know, I like to think of abundance as an opportunity mindset. I think that's something that's easier to grasp. Because when my life is full of abundance, my life is also full of opportunities. Because anything that comes into my life, even if it may look like a speed bump, it may look like a block in the way, may actually be sending me towards something that is really what I needed to do, or what I actually need to be accomplishing, doing whatever. So when we're coming from a place of abundance, no matter what happens, we're always finding the next opportunity. As opposed to coming from a mindset of scarcity, which is the opposite of that, which is that I have one place that I can go, and if I do not reach that one place, then to hell with everything, why am I even bothering? And that can really shift your day in incredible ways, from that positively waking up and saying, I'm going to take whatever comes, versus, oh God, what is going to happen today?
And so what would you say for, I think, folks who might be, let's since we're still kind of on a tangent for new grads.
Sure.
New grads who graduate and they realize that while there are a lot of opportunities out there, there are like a million people vying for each and every one of these opportunities.
Sure.
And how do they stay in the mindset of abundance? And for those of you watching, we'll actually talk about, I think, mid-level and even senior professionals a little bit too, because abundance and owning your own self-awareness is just as important there as it is for a new grad.
Yes. So, right, we're just coming out of school, and you know, what do I do? I think it really just comes back again to the why, and actually to the what. You know, what do I need right in this moment to keep myself moving towards whatever that big dream is? Because right now, if I can pay my rent working at a place that makes me excited to get out of bed every day, then that is a success for me. That means that I'm waking up every morning living a life that means something to me. And it's probably just a stepping stone, right? Like this is something that's going to keep me going right now. And it's going to be getting that experience too, right? We talked about that. A lot of new grads don't have any working experience, maybe didn't do any internships, which is perfectly fine. And in that moment, you need a little bit of experience.
And not doing that many internships was, me as well. So when I graduated back all the way in 2010, I realized just how much it was a struggle it was to somehow apply academic experience into the real world where the stakes are a lot higher, a lot different.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, like you said, the economy is in a place right now where everybody is vying for kind of the same things. And so whatever you can do that gets you one step closer to what it is you eventually need to do, what I really want to say is that there is no end point, right? Like, I don't have to be making this money, doing this job by the third day out of college, right?
Yeah.
There's no point in life that says, I have to have succeeded by this point, right? There's so many people out there that didn't start their successful career until way late in life. I mean,
we've heard about Oprah, Mark Cuban, Julia Child, and I think patience is actually something that you mentioned that was really important, because I remembered when I was first also coming out of school, the first job that I had made, I think, less money than the cost of tuition from the university I graduated from. And I had peers who were making double, maybe 1.5 times as much as that. And early on, I think in my career, I felt a lot of resentment towards that, because it was like, okay, I felt like I put in the time.
Right.
The millennial in me was extremely entitled.
Yes.
And it's really tough to, I think, at the early stage at least, I think feel happy for other people.
Yes.
I think feeling happy for other people is a very key aspect of this entire experience.
Yes. Oh, for sure.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, what I would like to say first to all of the millennials out there is that as much as we love social media, it can seriously be causing some detrimental effects in our lives, because it's so easy for us to look at this happy picture that other people are painting of their lives and say, why isn't my life like that?
Yes.
But we don't know what's going on in the background. We don't know anything besides the smiling picture and the new car they're standing next to and the job they're showing on LinkedIn. We don't know any of those things. For all we know, they could have gone into huge debt to buy that car, and they're standing outside this company. They're not actually working there, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Social media is not the answer, and it's so easy for us to compare at any point in life.
It is. It
really is. So incredibly easy. And
because it's our jobs early on, I think, in our career, and in a couple of years, and really for me now, it's all my friends and peers who are getting married and having kids.
Yes.
Yeah. By the way, for all of you who are watching and just tuned in, thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section, and we'll do our best to answer them throughout.
Yes.
So I wanted to switch gears a little bit and talk about how self-awareness is key in some of the folks in my group who have a lot of experience. They come in maybe 3+, 5+, 6+ years of experience, and maybe they didn't need to use self-awareness to get to where they are today. And so in that situation, maybe they're looking for their next job, or they've been laid off after they've been in a company for 10 or more years. How does self-awareness factor into this particular job search? Because all of a sudden you're being introduced to a new system that you've never thought about, and the stakes have changed, and you feel kind of like you're left out in the cold.
Right. Yes. It again is just going to come back to those questionings, but I think at this point in time, when you've gone through however many years in the industry, and this is actually the group that I work with primarily, what it comes down to is, what do I want to do next, and why do I want to do it next? Because what a lot of us do is, we get into a job, and we start going, and it's like, well, it's okay, this will do for now, and we keep going thinking it's maybe going to get better, right? It's going to be that job we expected it to be. And, eventually we've put some years into it, and we've kept doing it now because it's what we've been doing. And then maybe we start deciding, is this what I want to continue to do? Am I so stressed out that this is what is still working? And we start looking for a new job, right?
Right.
And we start looking for a new job that's pretty much exactly what we've just been doing, right? We look for the same title, we look for similar companies, we look for similar pay, similar benefits, and we're just following what we've been doing. There's no thought process into what is next. And I don't want to say no, but I think generally speaking, that's the process that we follow. And maybe we get a new job, right? And we go into it, this is going to be the one, right? This is going to be the job.
That's your first 3 months,
yes,
6 months.
Yes, those first 6 months, you're so excited, and this is what, I finally arrived, right?
Yeah.
And then it sets back in, like, this is exactly what I was experiencing at the last place. And
it doesn't matter whether, like, you're at a brand name company.
Yes.
I realize that no matter what kind of problems you have in your life, you can move to new places physically, career-wise, wherever you go to sleep every night. And if you don't address those problems, whether it's your ability to be self-aware or whichever, they will show up in some form or another 6 months from now, and it'll be like greeting an old friend again.
Yep, and let me tell you, it's going to be the same in your relationships, in your health and fitness plans, in your whatever is coming up in your life. If we continue following what we've always done, which is when unconscious runs the show, right? When we're not taking time to think, why am I doing this? What do I really want to do? How am I going to do it? We just follow the patterns, and we do it again, and we do it again, and we say, I'm never going to get here again. I'm done. I'm never doing this again. And then what do?
We stew. We sit in our bed at night and wonder how it is that we're back at square one.
Yep.
And I guess we hire a coach like you.
And that's something that breaks the pattern. Anything that you can do that breaks the pattern, that makes you think, okay, this time I'm really going to do it differently. And it's more than the thought, because we can think our way into anything, right? We have to take action, and we have to stay focused on it, or we're just going to fall back, because unconscious is extremely powerful, because it's easy. It's very easy to just follow the pattern.
Right. And so for the person who has some job experience, maybe it's easy to be unconscious because you kind of built yourself into this routine where you wake up at a certain time, eat breakfast, drive to work, listen to the same 15 minutes of that radio show, and then do your whole job, and then come home and basically do your evening routine and follow it all over again. In the world where I guess people want a little bit more out of you, I think I've gone to a lot of interviews in the last couple of years where they're looking for somebody who's entrepreneurial, somebody who's a go-getter, who's innovative, and all those things. For the experienced employee who has done that and maybe even has gotten laid off or fired because that just seems to be the new normal, how do they master that in their self-awareness, and how do they master that in the interview? Because I've sat in interviews where I've had prospective employers look at my resume and they're like, you've had a lot of jobs in the past 7 years. Can you explain yourself?
Sure.
And so how do people navigate that kind of conversation?
Well, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you said you have to own your story, right? Because there's a certain amount of confidence that we can have in the why behind how things have happened. For me, for a long time, I worked a lot of contract jobs, right? It's the Silicon Valley, we contract out all the time.
Pretty much.
Yeah, it's what happens, right? And so, I can say, well, I had a lot of contracts and they ended and that was it, right? Well, how different is that from, I worked at this company and I worked there through my contract and it was wonderful, but I realized there was something else that I was looking for. I wanted a new challenge, I wanted to do something new, so I found a new contract and I moved on to that. And same thing followed through. I had my contract, I was offered to have an extension. I decided I wanted another challenge. I had reached the limit of what I could learn, and so I found a new contract. How different do those two stories sound?
I think that one is definitely a lot more self-aware than the other, in that you are addressing why you decided to make the deliberate decision that you did. And so how do you think that works in the area of, so a lot of friends who work in HR or are recruiters often tell me that you should at least be in a company for maybe 1.5, 2 years before you move on. And obviously contracts in the Valley are 6 months, 9 months at a time. And so that obviously puts a cramp in a lot of what people want to do. And so how do you navigate that question from maybe the spiritual point of view?
Oh, from the spiritual point of view, that's a good question. I think that you know, it continues to just figure out what is sitting right for me. Because sometimes, as you pointed out in talks that I've heard before, you know, the interim, you know, when we take contracts, we have this amazing opportunity to take some time in between, right?
Yep.
And when we're working at a company without that contract, when we're full-time, we can put off going on vacation for years.
Oh yeah.
And years and years. And
you don't get any paid time off.
Exactly. And our brain needs that break or we will go crazy. We will go absolutely crazy. And so I think part of it comes down to taking advantage of those opportunities because, you know, in between contracts and again, in those turbulent, stressful times when we've been laid off, it's important to say, how can I make the most out of this, right? Can I invest in myself to make something different? Can I take some time to regroup and, you know, gather myself? And, you know, how does the spiritual aspect come into that? I honestly think that self-care is incredibly spiritual, and I know that's sort of an odd concept, but even...
Talk to us more about self-care, because that's a statement, that's a phrase I've heard a lot in the last, 2 years.
Yes.
And it seems like it's really important, so cover that a little bit.
Yes, self-care, you know, similar to self-awareness, it's pretty self-explanatory, but it's still not a concept that we deal with every day. And self-care is really just checking in with yourself and asking, what in the world do I need right now? Because sometimes I've worked, you know, a ridiculously long week, and then I've got commitments all weekend, and by the time Sunday night rolls around, all I want to do is take a nap, and I've got to get up the next morning, right?
Yeah.
And we feel horrible about not committing to something or pulling out of a commitment, right? But sometimes self-care means I had a really long week and I really want to go, you know, go to this family reunion, but God, I need to take a nap, I need to stop, I need to slow down. And that's incredibly powerful because when we continue to give of our energy and give and give and give, it drains us. And it makes it harder to do the things that we need to do, that we want to do. And without taking time for ourselves, we're never going to have that energy. And for a lot of people, parents especially, and people who are drawn to kind of the self-help or the helpers, I like to say, you know, your nurses and your teachers and anybody who's there to be of service, we forget that we need to take care of ourselves before we can take care of other people.
Right.
Because that's not what we're meant to be doing, right? We're supposed to be of service at all times. And
some of these companies here in the valley will ask that you be available on the weekends to do really non-weekend type things that can be addressed during the weekday too.
Yes.
And so we have to find that time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, you know, we talked about, right, that 15 minutes of meditation, which I'm going to throw out there. Meditation is something I have a hard time with. I know the power of it, but I have a hard time with it myself. And it's just finding 15 minutes sometimes where I turn off my phone, I put it in another room, I, you know, grab a glass of wine at night, you know, whatever it may be that's just for me and for nobody else. That is what self-care is, and that's what starts to bring the energy back in.
Great.
So that we can then go to that job that we're maybe not so excited about, but still have some energy left over at night to come home and start thinking about what do I really want to be doing next.
Awesome. So I want to jump back to the interview aspect of things.
Yes.
I know that we kind of have talked about new grads and we talked a little bit about experienced folks. I want to talk about sort of the interview itself.
Sure.
So I think one thing that you and I have discussed offline with regards to this conversation is how we're also self-aware of our gifts and our strengths that we bring into the interview process. I think a lot of people, especially in Silicon Valley, we're driven a lot by technical skills, right? Your ability to code, your ability to use software, to do all those kinds of things, which, you know, I'm not going to downplay in the interview process, is really important. And one thing that I've done a lot is I've read a lot of resumes over the last couple of months.
Right.
And I think in a lot of ways what you also see in tandem with the need for technical skills and all of that stuff is you see a lot of people selling themselves short.
Yes.
Way short.
Yes.
I see resumes in sales and marketing all the time of people who do amazing work and they don't talk about it at all.
Right.
And so as a coach and as somebody who is working to help people really discover their own potential, how would you link that back to self-awareness, and how can people communicate that within the interview so that they set themselves up for the best outcome?
Sure. You know, I think that the first step sometimes is actually asking other people. Because, like you said, it's hard for us. Feedback, exactly. But it's really hard for us to brag about ourselves. And there are times where we need to brag about ourselves. And sometimes the first step is actually asking somebody who you maybe worked with or someone who's a close friend, is just asking them, hey, what do you think my strengths are? And it's not coming from a place of, I need to puff my ego up.
Right.
It's purely coming from a place of, I need a little bit of help right now, and I can't see this in myself.
Right.
And a lot of times we don't see it in ourselves, right? We just see what's going wrong, what stupid things slipped out of our mouths, what typo we put in an email, and those things become huge, right? But we don't see the, huge increase in revenue that we brought in with a new project, or how we increase sales over, a quarter or anything like that. So first step sometimes is just simply asking somebody, again, from that place of, hey, can you help me out here? Just ask somebody.
Okay. Wonderful. And so I think like in that interview aspect where you are talking about your strengths at the level that you are, how do you also do it so you don't compromise yourself either? Because I know that we all value humility a lot, and how staying humble and still being hungry is this thing you hear every day in Silicon Valley, especially in the startup community. And so how do you ensure that in your process of being somebody who understands their strengths and knows what they're all about, that they don't fluff themselves up too much?
Sure. I think here's another word that's probably way up there in that woo-woo space, but it comes down to intention. What is my intention? What is my purpose, right? Am I speaking from a place of, wow, I don't really know what is my strength, so I'm just going to throw something out there and pretend like this is something that I've done. Or, I maybe did this much and I'm going to blow it up to this much, right? If you're coming from that place of I'm trying to sell myself beyond what I've actually done, you're going to sound a whole lot different than if you're coming from a place of here's who I am, here is what I've done, and here is what I'm going to do with it, or here's what I can do with it for you. And it's standing in that intention, standing in that truth, and standing in this is who I am. And when you come from that place, that's where confidence comes from. And so I think going into an interview, it's as simple as before I walk in saying to myself, what is my intention? My intention is to, show who I am, show what I can do, and to be myself in this interview, as opposed to just walking in and saying, I'm the greatest and you should hire me because da-da-da-da-da-da, even if those things are not really you.
So should the stated intention not always be then that I want to come in here and I want to get a job?
I think that really comes back to those questions, right? Because sometimes we're kind of throwing out the net wide, right? Like we want to go to as many interviews as we possibly can.
Guilty of that.
So that we can hopefully get a job, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes a little bit of courage to say, I'm only going to apply to these 4 jobs right now because these are the 4 jobs that mean something to me. And when you go into one of those interviews, you're coming from a place of this is why I'm here and this is why I want to be here, as opposed to going into an interview and just being like, I need a job. There's a different intention behind that. There's a different power behind that.
And what about the people who just go into an interview and they just do need a job? Because they need a job just to have a job to either pay the bills or whatever other goals that they may have that don't necessarily serve their career, like they have a hobby, for example.
So then, your intention for something like that is, my intention is to get this job so that it can move me closer to where I want to go. Because again, you're coming in from a place of, of power, and not from a place of that scarcity mindset or from that I'm never going to make it, or those limiting beliefs that are in our head that are really going to show up when we're talking to somebody.
So for somebody who, for example, says, I want a job because I have a couple of kids and I have that family now of mine, and I want to have a job that I can show up at 8 and leave exactly on the dot at 5 because I need to go pick up my kids. And I mean, for maybe a lot of companies these days, hearing that doesn't sound like the greatest because they want to know that they are A players, or people who show up, do the work, and stay there and do that, and maybe are even willing to put in an extra couple of hours in the evenings and weekends and things like that. And so how do you step your foot down on your personal life and your self-awareness of that,
Mm-hmm.
and pair that with companies who believe in that too. Because I think sometimes you see a lot of people who see a lot of, I think, dual scarcity in that area.
For sure. I think...
Which is like the worst,
right.
Dual scarcity.
I think a lot of this comes back to that self-care thing, right? Because if you're taking care of yourself, right? If I need to work during these times so that I can take care of my family outside of this, if you go in and say, I am going to work my tail off from 8 a.m. till 5 p.m., I guarantee you that person is going to get more work done than somebody who says, I'm going to work 60 hours a week, I'm going to bust my butt, and I'm just going to do everything that needs to get done. Because by the time that week is over, that person is tired, that person is stressed out, that person is no longer detail-oriented, and that company is not really going to get as much out. Just because they physically have that person there does not mean they're going to get a more productive worker.
Right. So, yeah, because it's been shown, I think, that if the more hours you work per week, the more your productivity actually goes down.
Yes, and there are studies out there as well that, there are countries all over the world that take an entire month off, right? And they have more productive workers, they have happier workers, they have less turnover, all of those things because they value taking care of themselves as opposed to burning themselves out for the sake of somebody else's bottom line.
Makes sense. So I want to talk about, I think now that we've kind of covered the interview aspect, I'm pretty much going through the entire job timeline of what it's like to when you have a job. I want to hop into a little bit about when those interviews go successful and now you have offers on the table. And maybe you're lucky enough to have multiple offers on the table. And so how does self-awareness factor into this part of the job search?
Self-awareness is hugely, hugely important at this time. When you're that fortunate that you get to pick and choose between these interviews, or rather these offers, you get to start thinking about what does this company offer versus this company versus this company. And I mean offer for you, right? If this person that you were talking about earlier who has kids and wants to be able to work from this time to this time, that's what that's where they're putting the importance when they're looking at these interviews. For somebody else, it may be that, I get to take X amount of days off. Maybe somebody really loves to travel, right? And that's important to them.
Unlimited PTO.
Right? Then that's something that's playing into these offers, right? So you have to start asking yourself, what is most important to me, and which of these companies is really going to offer that? And, of course, there is always that, we don't really know until we get there, right? But there's still a certain amount of discovery that we can do about ourselves beforehand so that we can apply it to all of these offers that we have. And that is really what's going to help us reach our own level of success, as opposed to just, this company is more prestigious than this company and more prestigious than this company, so I'm obviously going to go with this one, right? Because especially here in the Silicon Valley, there are so many big names out there.
So you're saying it's okay to reject a Google or a Facebook?
Yes. I think it's definitely okay with that because and there are people out there who don't want to work for a Facebook or a Google for their own reasons, right?
Right. Makes sense. Cool. And so I think that having those multiple offers is important, and I think hearing you say that that it's important to know what you want from not even just a work perspective, from people that work perspective, the benefits are also just as important. And there are even, I think, things in that when it comes to like the contract agencies that you work for too. Some of them offer vacation days, some of them don't. Some of them offer very, very little at anything at all. And so being aware of all those things is really important. And so Jake Rushing also says here in between that telling people who you are and what you're capable of is one thing. But if you truly believe in who you are and what you're capable of, then it can take you places.
Yes. Definitely. I mean, the biggest, revolutionaries of our time and before our time, they knew who they were, what they wanted, and they were willing to take a risk and to stand up for something, even if, we can talk about now in terms of political, but we're not going to go there. But even for, people who have, Steve Jobs left Apple, way back in the day.
They fired him.
Well, they fired him, I'm sorry. But, he was gone from that space, right?
But he made something of himself when he left.
Exactly.
We wouldn't have Toy Story and Pixar without that. A lot of the innards of the modern Apple laptop wouldn't exist without the founding of Next and all of those things. And I think he was a very ego-driven man when he left. And he was in some sense still a very ego-driven man when he returned. But I think he had a much more spiritual connection to what he was doing. And you hear about it in his 2005 Stanford commencement speech. that even though he couldn't connect the dots back in the 80s,
Mm-hmm.
I think in the 90s and the 2000s, those dots probably connected better than ever because he finally knew how things came full circle.
Right, for sure. And for myself personally, like as you said in the beginning, I have worked at some of those big companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
I worked there and I took those jobs that were, success in somebody else's eyes. And
BMC Software and NetApp are both global companies
Yes.
and were very well recognized in their circles.
yes, and
Yeah.
I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, making money I was supposed to be making, and all that kind of stuff. And for me to say I am leaving this job,
Mm-hmm.
there are people who looked at me like I was absolutely insane.
Right.
And by that other person's definition of success, yes, I was.
Mm-hmm.
I was absolutely insane to leave that paycheck and the benefits and all of those things behind. And now I get to stand in my own and say, this is really what I want to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is only the start of bigger things happening because I took the courage to take that leap of faith, no matter how scared I was, how many doubts were coming up in my head, all of those things. Sometimes you have to tell them to just shut up, go to the bar, and this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think that the phrase courage there, which Anthony over here uses a lot too, is really key. And I guess how do you develop that courageousness? Because I think a lot of people, they love the word courage,
Yes.
but the word courage applied in itself is really hard to, I think, follow through with.
Yes, I
And
think
it's very fluffy too.
it's very fluffy. It can be, yes. I think there's something to be said for comfort zones, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've kind of talked about that before, right? Comfort zones create our patterns.
Yeah.
And if we just, say to hell with it and jump out of there, sometimes that's not quite what we need, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we have to just sort of start pushing the boundaries a little bit, pushing them a little bit more until they
Mm-hmm.
become comfortable, until we can start kind of pushing them out. And some people need that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we need to take little small steps, like finding a volunteer organization outside of our work hours so that we're starting to find a little bit more passion in our
Mm-hmm.
lives. Maybe not in our 40 to 50 hours of the week, but in 3 hours of the week,
Mm-hmm.
we get to be extremely passionate. And that's going to start feeding our soul
Mm-hmm.
and feeding us to start saying, hey, this is something that's important. This is something that speaks to me.
Mm-hmm.
And this other stuff maybe is not so important anymore. So sometimes
That
it
reminds
just
me, I
takes a
think,
little
of
step.
Mark Sackett's Give 4 program, where he likes to talk about, and so Mark Sackett, who's another valued member of our
Yes.
group, runs an event called the Art of Active Networking, and Give 4 is attached to something that he does that encourages everybody to give 4 hours of their time, 4 hours of their money, in 4 ways rather,
Mhm.
hours of their time of the week, give their money, give their skills, or give their referrals to helping make the world a better place through volunteerism.
Mhm.
So that's just kind of what I'm mentioning for there.
Yes.
Cool. So now that I guess we're running in here on 47 minutes, I wanted to I think go further into the aspect of the system of how I guess jobs happen. So with regards to now you've gotten your offer and
Yes.
you're starting on the first day,
Mhm.
and we talk a lot about 30, 60, 90 plans when it
Mhm.
comes to getting hired somewhere.
Yeah.
When it comes to all of that, and you're just starting your new job, you're the new person in the office, tell me how self-awareness plays into that whole thing. And what if you go to your job and you're there for like 3 days and you realize that it was absolutely the worst fit ever, but
Mhm.
you just spent so long looking for that job?
Sure.
And how do you grapple with the two? So a lot of
Sure.
questions.
A lot of questions, yeah. So let's tackle one at a time, right? So it's your
Yeah.
first day and you've shown up, right? Or you're getting
Mhm.
ready to, and you've got the sweaty palms, and you're
Yeah.
double checking your map, right? Like, am I going to get there on time? And
Yeah.
there are all those worries, right?
Mhm.
The first thing is kind of that intention again, right? What is my intention for today? My intention is to show up and to be me and to connect with the people that I work with, right? That would have been my first intention way back when, right?
Yeah.
So that is something that when you hold on to it and you say, this is how I'm going to show up, that is how your day is going to go.
Mhm.
We're all going to be scared, right? First days are scary, there's no way around that. But I think what it comes down to is also a little bit of kindness to ourselves, right?
Mhm.
Because a lot of us want to be perfect right off the bat, right? We want to just know everything and do everything absolutely right. And sometimes we have to accept we're going to make some mistakes,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
We're going to make some mistakes. We're going to send an email to the wrong person. We're going to, whatever.
We're going to hit reply all on the company listserv.
Yes, right? Everybody loves that reply all email.
Yeah.
And we have to just be a little bit kinder to ourselves and
Right.
accept that that's going to happen,
Mhm.
right? That is day one. That is going to happen. And there's an awareness in that, right? Because if we go in thinking everything's going to be absolutely perfect and nothing's going to go wrong, when something does, it's going to have a huge impact on how we feel and how we act, right? And I think, you know, another thing too is when we go into that first day and the first week and the first month, is taking some time to allow things to not be perfect. Right? Okay. Take some time to just know this is, I'm going to need to adjust, right? And sometimes, as you said, we may go 3 days into it and we know. We know this was the wrong decision, right? And there's amazing awareness in that, right? If you realize that this is not the right place for me, this, you know, maybe this environment isn't right, maybe I'm working entirely by myself and I need a team, or I'm working entirely in a team and I'm a really independent person, if you can know that there's something wrong here, that awareness is huge, right? Because that can allow you to start thinking, okay, so now what? What do I start doing? Or are you just going to say, well, I put all this time into it, so I better stick it out? Because that's what a lot of us do, right? And we
destroy our souls doing it. We stay in the company for 5 years, and by the time we finally leave, we're ready to like punch a wall.
Yes, yeah. I have a friend whose very apt description of it was having your soul sucked out by a straw.
Right.
That was the very beautiful picture that he painted before he decided to start his own business. And I think that there's a lot of fear in the societal pressure of, well, I have this job, I obviously have to keep it. And there's absolutely nobody that says you have to keep this job.
No. I mean, we live in California where employment is at will, and so your company could drop you like a fly at any time, and so that means you can drop them like a fly.
You can do exactly the same thing. And that takes courage, right? That takes saying, this is not for me, and now I'm going to go back into this place that's scary, that's stressful, that may take me a while to, you know, if you decide that I'm just going to quit, right? Then what are you going to do to make the most out of this time? Or if you decide I'm going to stick this out until I find a new job, how am I going to show up? Right? Am I just going to show up being miserable every single day? I'm going to be the new guy who everybody hates and nobody wants to talk to. Or am I going to show up, do my job, do what I was hired to do until I find what's next?
And I think it's reflective of the work that you put out there too, because, you know, even at companies like mine where everybody works remotely, and I was just having this discussion the other day, when you're not doing your work, people notice. These kind of things don't like get hidden. And so you want to be at a company that you enjoy being at, otherwise it's going to be a pretty quick call out.
And you're going to burn out a whole lot faster. If you don't want to be there, I mean, what are you going to do, right?
Exactly. What are you going to do? And so my final question on this aspect before I think we hop into just sort of a recap and actually your wheel of life down there as well is now you've been at your company for a year and you're going through the evaluation process. Right now I think for a lot of people who were hired in January, February, March of last year, they're getting their evaluation forms to talk about what they accomplished over the last year, what they want to accomplish next. And they have that general fear going into these kinds of things where maybe the boss might say, we're going to let you go. And I think from talking to a lot of my peers, that generally doesn't happen where you're let go on your evaluation because it's just an evaluation. How do people master that evaluation process with their boss? And let's say their boss might not be as self-aware as we hope that they be, and so how do you also navigate that as well?
Sure. Well, you know, I think the first thing is that use this evaluation for you to do the same thing, right? If you're being evaluated, why not do the same thing and evaluate how you're showing up, how you want to be showing up, how the company is showing up for you, how your management is showing up for you. I mean, there's studies out there that show we don't leave our jobs, we leave our management, right? There's so many people out there that we could love the job and decide, well, I'm not going to do this anymore because I cannot work for this person one more day, right? So I think that's step one is treat it like an evaluation, but treat it like a 360 evaluation. And, you know, I think also awareness comes into play here too, because if you know that something maybe hasn't been going as well as it could, think about that. How am I going to talk to my management about this? And then think about the things that have gone extremely well. And how can I play that into this as well? Because I don't think that many of us, unless we're completely horridly like, you know, hating this job, right? We're not going into evaluations knowing that, well, I'm just going to get fired, right? Because most of us, there are things, we have strengths and we do some things well, and there are other things that we don't do quite as well. And
I think every boss will acknowledge that these strengths and weaknesses are a natural part of the whole experience. And that you're not going to be great at some things, you're going to be superior at so many other things, and that we're still going to keep you because you have that room to grow. You're not bored here yet.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think, again, being aware, be able to talk about those things with your management and be able to determine whether or not this is where you want to stay. And I think it's also important to, go into these knowing that you're going to get some criticism, right? That's what these evaluations are for, are to know what's working, what's not working, and to be able to not take that one negative nugget and take it in to say, I'm a horrible person, or I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, because a lot of us do that. We hear one wrong thing, and it doesn't matter if the entirety of the evaluation besides that was perfect, spot on, awesome. That one thing that was not right, that's the one we take on. And I think it's important to be able to let that go a little bit and to know, okay, this is what I need to work on, but look at how great all these other things are going, and these are the things that I need to continue to expand on and to improve on and to continue growing through.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So we're heading up here on 55 minutes, and we'll go well over the hour. I
wanted to joining us and staying with us, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. And so, if you're here and still watching, there are 11 of you here. There's been as many as 20 actually. It's pretty good. If you have any questions, please put them in the comment section below. We'll answer them. The next couple of minutes, we're going to actually do a recap of kind of what we learned today, and then I'm going to tell you how to get in touch with Sandy if you enjoyed what you've heard here over the last hour or so. So let's just kind of do a recap, because we talked about a lot.
We did.
Obviously, careers have a lot of working pieces to them, and so for anyone who's probably watching and has gone through this for the last hour or so, it's probably pretty overwhelming to think about self-awareness by this point, because it's like every single nook and cranny of everything that you do every day, and it's like, so I literally have to be on. I'm going to be exhausted by noon. And so let's just cover up on quickly what self-awareness is again, and how it ties into expectations. And I notice you have this really cool graphic here called the Wheel of Life.
Yes.
I think you talk about that a little bit.
Yes, for sure. So self-awareness, right? How do you not become completely overwhelmed by it? I think the most important thing to remember is that you don't just gain self-awareness, right? There isn't one point where like, oh my gosh, I know everything about myself. Self-awareness is a process. It's something that we continue to learn more and more about ourselves, and it's going to change, right? Because we change, and every experience we have and every person we talk to, they change us somehow. And we have to continue to be aware that those things are happening, right? Because we're never going to just reach that point of understanding ourselves. So self-awareness is something we practice. I love talking about practice, right? Because one of my favorite things include practice. We don't get better at anything unless we practice.
Right.
And self-awareness is no different.
Totally.
So, today maybe you ask yourself one question, right? Or you give yourself one intention, or, one little 2-minute break to just take a deep breath, not look at your phone, whatever it may be. That's a start. The next day, maybe you take 5 minutes to not look at your phone. Maybe you put your phone in the other room before you go to bed, or you ask yourself 3 questions, or you wonder what it is that caused me to have whatever reaction, because I think we react to a lot of things, right? And we allow that reaction to continue and to start having conversations in our head about how could it have been different, instead of saying, wait a second, does this really matter, right? So every single day we can continue to expand on these things and to learn something more about ourselves and to take that learning and apply it somewhere else. So it's a process, it's a practice, and it's something that you can continue to become better at, and not something that you need to fear or feel exhausted by.
Great. And then you mentioned a little bit about letting go of others' expectations and defining your own happiness. Cover that a little bit too.
Yes, so defining your own success and happiness is a huge one for me, because I just left this idea of what success looks like, and now I have to create it for myself. And I think that's one of those things that we really have to do some thinking on, and some, if you journal or whatever it is that gets you in touch with yourself, walking your dog, whatever it is that gets you quiet. Start thinking about, what are the moments that I feel completely connected to my life or to another person? What is it that makes me want to get out of bed? Those things that light us up. Those are the things that we need to start paying attention to, just as much as the things that bring us down and drain our energy. And the more we just start paying attention to those things, the more we're going to learn.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And so what does this have to do with the Wheel of Life that I see?
Yes. So this is, we'll see. This is a little small, but I'll put it up there. So this is called the Wheel of Life, and it's provided to us by IPEC, which is the coaching program that I study through. And this Wheel of Life is a tool that we can use to start gaining a little bit more awareness in various different areas of our life. So personal development, spiritual awareness, fun and enjoyment, relationships, health and aging, personal finance, career, and family and parenting. So this is a place of kind of asking ourselves questions, right? So if I'm looking at one of these sections and I'm saying, okay, so in my personal development, I think I'm about a 6, right? I could be doing more. In spiritual awareness, I'm feeling pretty good, I'm more around an 8. And you're going to run all the way through here and ask yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being completely dissatisfied, 10 being satisfied, where do I fall? So I'm going to just kind of make one up really quick, and then I'll show it to all of you, and we'll share this with you so that you can try and do this exercise as well, and just to get a little bit of an idea of where you are right now. So we're going to go here, career and profession, we're kind of down here in that 4 because that's sort of what we've been talking about today. Personal finance kind of down here as well. Health and aging, I'm feeling pretty good, I'm around a 7. Relationships on the other hand, let's see, intimate, I'm okay, but social, I'm not really spending any time with people because I'm too busy working. And fun and enjoyment, again, I'm kind of around a 5 because all I'm doing is working, right? Mm-hmm. So now I'm looking at this wheel and I've got all these points, right? So what do these points mean?
It's an average of what your life looks like at any given point?
Something like that. So then the next step is you're actually going to connect the dots, right? So you're going to connect all these dots here, and this pen is not the greatest, but that's okay. So this is what this wheel looks like, right? So if I were driving a car right now and this was a wheel on my car, how smooth or bumpy would this ride be?
That would be one bumpy ride.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so
one very bumpy ride.
Exactly. So what this is, again, I don't know if you can see this at all, but it's kind of a really strange shape and it's nowhere close to being a circle. Mm-hmm. So the Wheel of Life tells us what areas of our life we need to start kind of working on or looking at. And it's a great tool for starting, and I think the number one thing I would recommend to anyone who wants to download this and try it out is be really, really honest with yourself, because if you try and say, no, everything's great, I'm a 10 on everything, right? You're not going to get anything out of this tool. You're not going to get anything out of it at all. But if you're honest with yourself and you say, nope, I'm a little bit farther down here.
But you can be it's the same number on everything. Yes. It would still be a wheel, right?
It would still be a wheel, and then you get to ask yourself, but is this the wheel I want, right? If you've got a real small wheel on a big old car,
yeah,
you're not going as fast as you'd like. If you've got a big old wheel on a little tiny car, also not really going to do you as well. So it comes down to that awareness. Is this how I want to show up? And if I want to show up differently, how can I start making changes in these areas so that I show up differently?
Very good, very good.
Yes.
So we're coming up to the end of this now, and so at the end of every one of these webinars, I'd like to usually have the folks that I interview, I'd like to usually invite them to, find out how they can contact you, get in touch with you, if they like what they heard today, and they want to hear more, and they want to maximize their potential through maximizing their self-awareness and not living life by the expectations of others. What can they do?
Sure, so you can check out my website, which we'll put down here in the bottom. I think it's also in this event as well, but that's www.purposefilledpresence.com.
Great.
And if you check that out, you can look at my blog, you can watch some videos about how you can work with me, or you can sign up for a complimentary session. And in this 45-minute session, you can work with me to kind of see how might you be able to move forward, or maybe what is it that's starting to kind of hold you back in life. And those 45-minute sessions are great for just getting a little nugget, and then you can learn more about how I can support you in creating more in your life, be it in your career or in your personal life, whatever it may be. Self-awareness is not something that you just find out in your, compartmentalized, career, right? Self-awareness is something that snowballs everywhere, and as soon as you start taking those steps, everything else is going to change.
Perfect, great. And so for everyone here, I'd like to thank you again for spending the hour plus here with us today on this Albert's List webinar. I try to find ways to really make this an engaging group, so if you can comment, leave any other questions below. Sandy or I can answer them after the fact. And for those of you who are in the Bay Area, this isn't just the last time that you can, see me somewhere within your geographic range. I'll be back here tomorrow in Santa Clara for Mastering the 2017 Job Interview at Northside Santa Clara Library. You can go to our events tab, and it's a free event. I think we have 280 people RSVP'd so far. So come in. We'll have, you can listen to how you can master these interviews that you're about to go on here over the next couple of weeks, and also join us for networking afterwards. Yes. And so, do you have any final words to say to our audience tonight today before we sign off?
Final words, I just want to say, right now, today is a perfect time to make some changes. Every single moment is a chance to make a change and to move in another direction, and I would really like to encourage everyone to be a little bit more compassionate and to share a little bit more love and to spread that everywhere, and now is the time for that. So continue doing that, and Albert, I will see you tomorrow at the library as well, so if you would like to meet me, I will be there in person with Albert.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, have a great afternoon, everybody.